created today when you told me.
All right, welcome to another edition of CROWSFOOT, brought to you by Northwest College of Construction. This is one of my very dear friends, Mr. Randall Ward. He's going to share with us he's going to share with us at least some of his experience. I don't think we have all the time to get into all of it, but we'll do the best we can. Anyway, Randy, how are you today? And thank you for joining us.
I'm doing pretty good today, and nice to see you again, even though it's not in person.
There's been a lot of that lately.
Yeah, the world has changed as we know it.
Yes. Well, Randy, give us a little bit of background here. So tell the viewers where you came from, and we'd like to hear your story about how you got involved with the trades, and once you got into the trades, what'd you do after that time, and then bring us up to present.
Well, once I got married and my wife got pregnant, I realized I had to work for a living. And it didn't really dawn on me before that, because I was out having a good time in life, you know, being a youngster. And so anyway, once I started figuring out I had to work for a living, I dabbled here and there in different jobs, you know, like a maintenance man for an apartment building, a little construction work here and there. My father was a mason, so I did hard work for him, you know, mixing the mortar and carrying the brick and the block. And so I did a little bit of that, but I went to work for a company. I moved to the Los Angeles area. Now, don't ask me why, but, you know, during the recessions, if there's work anywhere, it's usually in the big cities like Los Angeles compared to the smaller places. That's the way it used to be. And so I got out there and I got a job at $3.75 an hour, because I didn't really know much, right? And I was working, and the foreman was a master sergeant from the Army. No, Marine Corps. And the guy knew all kinds of incredible fun stuff, and he was just fun working with anyway. So master sergeant, Marines, and he taught me a whole bunch of stuff, man. And after that, my next job, I left that company because they wouldn't give me a raise, and I got a job as a foreman for a newly forming company, because I learned enough from that sergeant to, you know, I could do remodeling and be foreman material. And from there, I decided I'm getting my own license. And I thought, well, if I could just build, you know, one house, then I could save the money from that, and maybe next time build two, and then maybe build four. And that was my thinking back then. You know, reality is a whole different thing, you know. But anyway, it got me working. And I got a license, and getting a contractor's license, for those of you who don't know, if you knew everything that you were going to have to go through, you probably wouldn't even attempt it. But if you just go ahead and go start doing it, you'll be able to handle it. You know, it all comes to you at the right time. Sometimes you get stressed out because the reading, oh my God, understanding all the government and insurances and all that stuff is quite challenging if you're not an avid reader, and if you don't like government documents like I am, kind of both of those. I don't like government documents, and I like a good novel, but that government stuff, man, you know, and tax codes and doing everything right and staying out of trouble there is a big part of it.
It's a huge part of it, right? And I think that's super apt what you had to say about easing your way into being a contractor. It's no joke that the that it takes the average contractor about 10 years to get on top of their game if they're ever going to. I very often have likened being a contractor to having some sort of ailment or physical pain in which you learn to deal with that pain over time. And you're able to work through it, right? You're able to carry a certain amount of pain with you and your threshold of pain. I often use that as an analogy for what it's like being a small business owner, and certainly a sole proprietor or a smaller single general contractor is no joke. And a lot is required of you, from physical work all the way down through the executive portion. And making people happy, and not having someone run away with all of your hard-earned money as well. So it's a full-time job. So I really appreciate what you had to say there. I was wondering if you wouldn't mind stepping back one or two steps. And you mentioned that you came to LA, and where did you come from? Where did you start out?
Well, I was raised until I was 18 in Indiana. And I'd left there before that and went back and forth, but I traveled around a lot of states. I hitchhiked around a lot of states, and I also had a car and drove around a lot of states. I spent a lot of time in Florida and all this, that surrounding area. And then Denver, I spent several years in Colorado, and sometimes up in the foothills, mostly Denver. And then New Mexico. My brother married, he was living in Denver as well. That's how I ended up there. And he married a girl from New Mexico, and he went back there. So he asked me to come down and visit him, and I spent a good 6 months to a year there, and then decided to head out to LA, because it was tough finding a job at the time. And I knew LA had jobs, if anybody did.
When you got to LA, give us an idea, what year was that, or if you recall?
I got to LA in 1975.
Okay. Now, I know that you worked sometime in the tracks, and it's unclear to me if you did that as a carpenter, or did you kind of work your way into becoming a carpenter, or did you take some of those early skills from your dad and start applying those later on? Or when you got to, you mentioned that you worked with the master sergeant. Were you doing carpentry then, and then you got your contracting license, and then you started framing houses? Or give us a little background on that detail.
Yeah, I guess first off, I was always good at math, and English was always my challenge, but math came naturally to me. So that's a good thing to come naturally to you if you want to be a contractor. And I started doing, we did little framing things, more like repaired walls and built a lot of new ones in remodeling when I was working with the master sergeant. And then I got to the place where I did some room additions, and I actually picked up a book and looked at framing and taught myself to frame more than was taught by someone, how to frame a whole house. And within a couple of years, I was framing custom homes. I would drive around out in the foothills. I moved out of LA because when my daughter was born, we were visiting New Mexico, and we came back. And as you come down out of the hills, and you see Los Angeles back in the 70s, it looked like a bowl of brown soup. You couldn't hardly see anything, just the smog. And when I saw that, I thought, there's no way in hell I'm raising my daughter in this. So I started moving north. I went to Oxnard first, and I would drive around with binoculars through the foothills there and look for anybody that was disturbing the earth. And then I'd go get a job. And typically they'd want me to frame their house because they had somebody to do the concrete or something. And I put together a framing crew, and I started framing custom homes. And I got pretty good at it. just figured out everything.
Yeah.
And so back then, getting in the union was like really a good thing. You could make a lot more money if you were in the union framing, but it was really hard to get in. I mean, all the commercial was union, and most of the big residential was union. Nowadays, that ain't so. And the union kind of screwed themselves. But anyway, that's another story. And so anyway, I joined the union, and I got on as a framer in the union. And that's before I got my contractor's license.
Got it. Did you meet, is that around that time, is that when you met Roland Duncan?
Yeah, I met Roland through the union, yeah. I called him out of the hall. He was sitting in the hall, and I called him out. As a matter of fact, through a chain of events. By the way, I got to tell you, people who get their contractor's license, I've seen people a lot smarter than me who failed. So first off, you got to be able to put in a lot of hours in the beginning. It's like growing say a garden or a forest, you know. Say you're going to grow a bunch of almond trees in the beginning. It's a lot of work, but someday you're going to have a whole bunch of product coming to you, and you have a lot more time on your hands to enjoy life. But you got to spend a lot of hours before that. But there's also what I believe is luck. You can call it karma, you can call it luck. You got to have a little bit of that going your way to be successful. And so I got lucky, and I ran into I was doing a room addition for a guy, and he hired a different company, and they really screwed it up. And so he hired me, and I went over and fixed it all. He told his friend about me, and so I got a job doing a room addition for his friend. And his friend was the CEO at the Sacramento State Capitol for the Assembly. And so his wife, who loved me, and at the time my brother was my partner, she loved us because they delivered a dumpster, and she went out to pay for it, and we said, no, that's in the bid, you don't pay for that, because we were honest guys and hardworking. And so she told her husband, you hire those guys at the state capitol. And she kind of ruled the family with an iron fist. She was pretty cool. And so he hired us. He gave it a shot, you know, to bid a job. And I went down and did my first job at the state capitol. And that was like going from grade school to college, you know, skipping high school. It was very educational. Those politicians.
Yeah, I could only imagine. So, and I'm sure I haven't heard all the stories, but you have mentioned good old Willie Brown a few times, that you knew Willie Brown pretty well, and that's pretty fun. And then later on, when I was quite a bit younger, I think we met when I was either 18 or 19. I was 19, and for a few years, I got to work with you and Roland down at the on and off. That was down at the state capitol, and that was an eye opener for me. Definitely, I think I spent more time in the elevator than I spent doing doing work, moving material up and down elevators is what I remember, and then changing out, moving a door 2 feet to the left or something like this is a lot of what we were doing. Let's keep going from where you started. You started working with your brother at the state capitol, and then what did you guys do after that?
Well, we worked there for a lot of years, and my first wife and I broke up, and I met my current wife, and unfortunately, she lived in LA. And I used to fly back and forth for like every weekend for 5 years. I'd fly back and forth to see her. I'd leave Friday early, and I'd come home on Monday morning to run my cruise. And a lot of that was at the state capitol. I did other jobs besides the state capitol, I did a lot of commercial type work back then, besides residential, but mostly commercial.
I remember that you were living in Folsom for some time, and I remember very well your flights back and forth from LA at that time. And yeah, I remember I would come and visit you at your place there in Folsom.
So I got tired of flying back and forth, and so I kind of hooked up Roland with all my contacts at the state capitol, and he got to take over a lot of that work. And I went on down to LA and started, buying condos and flipping them. And, I actually built our first custom home for Denise and I. That's my current wife. And so I got into building architectural homes. It was just really fun and challenging. It was something different. I was tired of doing commercial, like tenant improvement work, they call it, when you're working inside big high-rise buildings and you're just throwing up walls and, a lot of flooring and painting and, doors and cabinetry. And even though I had my own cabinet shop, that helped make it fun. I got tired of it, and I was ready for a switch. And so building homes from the ground up and especially the architectural homes, a lot of structural fun, with I-beams and all kinds of concrete technicalities.
Really nice stuff. Really nice stuff. Do you still have photos, or you have some video or photos of your old place in Marina Del Rey or some of those homes you did? Those are really impressive. I love the way you had that one place in Marina Del Rey that just the entire back of the house opened up and just had that nice coastal breeze coming through. Yes. Really clean design. Really, really nice. I'd love to share that with the viewers. If you can send me some of that stuff, would be very cool.
Yeah, I'll see if I can find some photos of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a nice house. And then I sold it because at the time, I didn't realize my wife, Denise, didn't watch TV, and she likes the house quiet or listening to music. And I put in all this surround sound in, all wonderful stuff. And it was all open floor plans. So there was no place for her to go, if I was watching TV. And I found her sleeping on the floor in the closet one day. And I said, "What are you doing?" She was upstairs in the furthest place away from the TV, sleeping on the floor. She says, "I needed to find a place away from all the noise." And I said, "Okay, we're selling the house." And we sold it. It did really well. But the guy who bought it later hired me, and I went back and did a room addition to it. So that's the reason I brought that up. So I did a room addition for my own house for another person.
Man, and then later on you were, or in some of this time you were working with Denise, and you guys had and maybe you still are. I don't know. You have to bring me up to speed on that. But you guys had quite a run with doing a lot of real estate work down there. And Denise was a powerful realtor.
Yeah. Anybody that's on the west side of LA probably has heard of my wife, because she's a top real estate agent, Denise Fast. F-A-S-T. Anyway, so, and not only that, but she's an A personality, so she probably knows more people than most people on earth. It's like
I can attest to that, man.
It doesn't matter where we travel to, all of a sudden somebody said, "Denise!" It's unbelievable, uncanny, really. We'd be driving around Sacramento when she'd come visit me, and she'd see someone walking down the street she knew, So, and I lived there.
Yeah, amazing.
I never saw anybody I knew.
And a lot of people, so that has anybody who knows you knows how many people you know.
I did it. When we got together, we bought and sold. You call them flippers, but we would go and we would restore houses. If it was a Spanish house, we'd buy it and we'd restore it and sell it. And we always did really nice work. Nowadays, when people flip houses, and because Denise is a real estate agent, she'd ask me to inspect them as well as a regular inspector. And you just wouldn't believe some of the stuff these people who are flipping houses do. And so anyway, so we would always do these wonderful jobs. We always sold them immediately. It was really easy. And we probably did, the first few years we were together, maybe 12, 13. We bought an apartment building and it was 4 units and turned it into condos. And it was all screwed up and we fixed it all up and blah, blah, blah. So we did really good with that. Well, one house, this is interesting. A guy he was a pretty wealthy friend of ours, and he had factories of clothing. He made clothing, and he had factories at one time, 5,000 workers. But he bought a $2.5 million house in Manhattan Beach on the ocean front. Okay, and he hired me to tear it down and build him a new house. And we built this beautiful architecture. Oh my God, it was really a nice house and lots of cool stuff involved in it. And so this guy, 10 years later, he wants to sell it. Okay. And between myself and what he paid, he was into it about 4 million. So, but he sold it for 9.5 million or something. And the person who bought it, now, Denise had an open house and about 100 people came through. And everybody thought it was a brand new house, even though it was 10 years old, because he took really good care of it. And, you know, just him and his wife, and it was great designs and by the architect and all that. And so anyway, the guy who bought it wanted more parking, so he tore it down and built a new house. A $9 million house, just tore it down. That's how much money is in some of these places, man. Jeez.
That's amazing. And that was 9 million a while ago.
Yeah,
that's not 9 million today. Now what? That's probably $1 trillion now. No.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
Well,
I'm just kidding.
6.5 trillion. No.
Oh wow, man.
I don't even think that when I was a kid, I don't even know if there was a concept of $1 trillion, you know?
I don't think there was a concept of $1 trillion until about a year ago.
I know it's really, trillions getting thrown around like it's nothing, but if anybody, when people really figure out what $1 trillion is, oh man, it's going to be scary when they wake up to what this government's done, but let's not get political here. You're in the right place, I think. Denise has wanted me to tell you about a couple of houses I built. They were like 3.5 stories high, and they were on a canal, the largest canal in the Los Angeles area that leads out to the ocean. And it's like a block from the ocean. Just a block in from the ocean, there's a canal. And I built 2 new houses there. And we had you know how you use those sonotubes on your video?
Yeah.
Well, anyway, we had steel tubes that were like 3 foot round. I'm pretty sure they were 3 foot. They might have been 42 inches round. But we had to go down in the sandy water. So we had to use steel because I went down about 13, 14 feet deeper than the water. And then we were drilling out the muck, which was just sandy muck. And I had to get all that out of there. And then the I-beams, the steel held the sand and the sand back. It didn't hold the water back. But we had to treat the I-beams with this special paint, like epoxy type paint. And we had to lower them into into the steel tubes. And then we put the concrete hose in the bottom. And you can pour concrete underwater. You've got to start from the bottom and you just keep pulling the hose up. And then the water floods out of the tube eventually. And I had to set I-beams down in about 16 foot below ground level with 13 foot of water. And there was 18 of those. We broke a crane on this particular project. a big crane. The guy tried to put too much trying to get those steel tubes out.
Yeah.
And the suction wouldn't let them come out. So we ended up burning them off with a torch and leaving them in there. Now, the contractor who bid that, unfortunately, didn't do well losing those. But, you know, I had a subcontractor doing that part. I just set where everything was, all the batter boards, you know, and where the I-beams went down into the concrete. I pumped the concrete and I set the steel in the concrete. But you can lose your butt on stuff you don't know is going to happen.
Yeah, there can never be enough of a contingency in a contractual agreement. That's for sure. And you know, it's funny, you're talking about a house, but it sounds like you're doing bridge work. We've got people who work for Hamilton and Cascade Bridge and stuff like that. And you're talking about a house. You sound like it sounds like some of the stories I hear from these guys who are pile bucks and they're working on bridges. So that, again, I'd love to see some of the video. Well, you probably don't have any video, but maybe you got some pictures of these. I think it'd be great to share. If you have a few pictures,
I'll see what I have. You know, I'm not real big on advertising or keeping pictures of all my work. I've just got it. Denise says she has some, you know. Just a shot or two. That's all. It'd be neat to see a couple pictures if you have them. Yeah, because this house was, you know, it was I-beam structure all the way up. So I think I have a picture of me standing on top of one of the I-beams, you know. Eating a sandwich? Eating a sandwich out of your pail? No, I was kind of hanging on because I was up there pretty high. Let me tell you, you know, these guys sitting on the beam eating lunch, they do it every day. They were brave guys. I wouldn't go up on one of those high rises. I just don't think I had that kind of stuff in me. Yeah. That height is something I deal with. I'm not afraid of height, but I'm not going to take it for granted either. No. So anyway, I built those houses. Turned out really good for me, you know. I don't think the guy that did the steel tubes and the drilling made very much money. He didn't lose money, but losing that steel in the ground cost a few bucks. And we finished those houses. They were very architectural, beautiful houses. Nice. So you talked about being in the union for a little bit there, and a lot of our viewers are their first year apprentices in carpentry, laborers, roofers, masons. So we handle 10 different programs here for 10 different trades, heavy equipment operators. At any rate, what are, in your experience, if you could share a little bit with our apprentices, what are some things that you wish you knew then that either you know now or learned a little ways down the path? What is something that you think would be very important to hear as an apprentice? You mean like when I was more like an apprentice, what I wish I could have learned more? Yes. Or something that looking back you could say to an apprentice nowadays, you know, some things to look out for. Mile markers. Yeah, well, I just say try and keep a good attitude. You're going to get the crappy work a lot. But if you keep a good attitude and you go ahead and do the crappy work, you're going to get the good work eventually because they're going to want to give it to you, the guys who are around you. And nobody likes someone who's always trying to get out of doing the work. So those kind of guys, they go by the wayside. So just working hard and just being a team player, man. Yeah, you're the one who's going to go into the house first to clean out the junk. But guess what? The tradesmen go into there and do work. So just get used to it.
Yeah. It seems I've watched that attitude from so many people where they actually work harder trying to avoid work than they would have to work just going in and applying themselves, right? I've seen that so many times, and not just in the trades. I think it's a fairly regular human trait, isn't it? That we see people
natural.
They are, it's if you can avoid it, keep avoiding it until it slaps you in the face, seems to be a common mistake, right? Yeah.
No.
That's
Yeah, when I retired a few years ago, and like I told you, I was retired for about a year and a half, and then I went back to work. But when I retired, my son used to work for me, and I always thought I would just turn the business over to him and my daughter, because my daughter did all my paperwork, and she actually could build a wall. She worked with us at the state capitol for a while.
Yeah.
I don't know, you probably remember that.
I didn't work with Shelley. I mean, I worked with Shelley, but I didn't get to build any walls with her. But yeah, I know that she was, like my kids have been with me on job sites ever since they were born, right? So
yeah.
I know the same applies to Shelley in your case. David too. Both are very bright and very hard workers that I
So anyway, I didn't really have anybody that I could pass my business on to, So it just kind of just died. And I would have loved to have had a good apprentice who really wanted to be a contractor. I would have taught him everything he needed to know. And I think if I might get going again here in Nevada, because it's funny, where I live right now, you call someone to do work, you're lucky if they return your call. There's so much work because a lot of people are moving out of the cities who have money. And so there's a lot of people with money living around here and not enough service type people to take care of them. And especially with the pandemic and the extra unemployment, restaurants are closed Monday and Tuesday in most places. And when you're waiting in line at a restaurant to go eat, it's not because they don't have a table, it's because they don't have a server. And so it's the same thing with construction. I paid a guy to do my roof. I put down a deposit about 2 months ago, and his day to do the roof on my current home, he's coming out in September. So I'm waiting almost 6 months just to get a roof.
Yeah, and this is a huge opportunity right now for any of those apprentices or people who are coming into the trades right now. And it's been said before in other interviews that we've done here, but they are going to be able to demand their wage coming up here in the next 10 years. We are at a skills gap in the nation where we have never seen this before, where like you and even myself, while we're coming up in the trades, in our own times, there was plenty of people who could do what we could do, or at least there was a lot more competition. And so that kept the price down, of course. Now we're at this cliff now. And I wish more people could understand the economics of this situation and really get in and get their nose to the grindstone, because it's going to pay dividends, or however you want to say it, but it's going to pay off for those who can put in even a few years of really hard work. They're going to be a lot better off than many. So that's a huge point you're saying there. I recently relocated from Portland, and I moved out of the area about an hour and a half away. We're experiencing the exact same thing. A lot of people are leaving the city areas, and there are small little boom towns here and there for the right service people like yourself, contractors, builders, people who actually have some experience and know what they're doing. You can basically name your price. So there's economic opportunity out there. Anyway, that's what I'm getting from what you were saying, and I appreciate that, because it's a huge part of what I think our new apprentices need to hear and understand. So, because a lot of these younger people come in, they're like, well, I just wanted a job. And they don't realize the steep power curve that's involved with becoming either a contractor or just a journeyman is not some small feat. It's a lot of hard work. And I hope I hope we're not lost there. I hope there's some people out there still willing to get their hands dirty, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that one of the problems is people there's not like a lot of men's men anymore, know how to work on their own car, know how to do this and that. Everybody's grown up with computers, and they're kind of soft in that sense, although they're probably more brilliant than I'll ever be, who knows. But the one thing is, I'm just a little worried about some of these jobs that are going to be available with all the robotics that are coming and all that. But I think construction work is always going to need people. And you don't have to be a he-man. You can start off with soft little fingers and, no muscles, and they all grow. And you'll get used to splinters and aches and pains, and eventually you toughen up, and you don't have to be tough right away. You just have to be willing to take a little bit of a kicking. And then, when you become a journeyman, well, right now, especially a carpenter, if you can find a carpenter, good luck, man. They make a lot of money.
Yep. I tell my apprentices too, it's the carpenter at the end of the day that has to know all the other overlap for all of the other trades. The carpenter finds themselves at the center of all of the math, the logistics, and the career path for that carpenter who's dedicated is far and wide. They don't necessarily make right away the same as your plumber or your HVAC or your heavy equipment operator right out the gate, but their resourcefulness and the amount of information the average carpenter has to know is pretty staggering. And I don't think a lot of people get that. They come to the trades thinking, oh, well, this is, I was a failure at math and I was a failure in school, so I'll go be a carpenter. That's a rude awakening. And then on top of that, you're going to have to get your back strong while you're at it and be able to use your brain while you're on your feet, all of the points that you're hitting here are so important. And people need to be able to fix their cars and need to be able to fix their faucets and need to be able to build themselves a shelter, or be able to barter and trade for some services if the time ever may arise, right? So the resourcefulness of the carpenter, from plan reading to math to engineering on the fly, that happens so much of the time, is it makes you wildly resourceful. And anyway, I really like what you're saying there. And it's funny, because when I met you, I had grown up working with my dad and my granddad, and I had just about had enough. I did have enough when I met you. So, but I loved working with you so much that helped me to actually continue. So that, thank you for that, because I may not have even continued down the path. And I did try to get away from it for a while, as you well know, but it came back to find me, and I'm glad it did, because it made me always stayed resourceful, always made my own money, always earned my own way. And there's really nothing like that to give someone sense of ownership over their life and their direction, and learn their learn how to earn their keep, as if you will, right? So anyway, thank you for that. And I love what you had to say about the skills gap and the dire need for people to get out there and get their butts to work. So let's carry on from there. So you ended up down in LA. We've talked about some of the great work you did down there, and hopefully you'll have some pictures for me. But so bring us up to speed from LA. Why did you guys leave LA? What was the reasoning for that?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that part.
What got you to leave LA?
Oh, well, the first reason I was leaving LA was because of the pollution. That I didn't want to raise my daughter in the pollution.
But then later you met Denise and you ended up
then I went
Marina
back
Del
with
Rey.
Denise, and this next time I left LA is because I was pretty sick of the politics that the big cities are going through right now. You know, I don't really want to turn this into a Democrat, Republican, libertarian type show, you know. I don't know, maybe you go there, maybe you don't. But I just got tired of, you know, first off, government in every little aspect of your life. And it dawned on me, I'm getting pretty old, and I thought, oh my God, I got to get out of here or I'm going to die in LA. And I grew up in the country, and I never planned on dying in LA. I was just visiting there, you know, I had a wife there, you know, we're making money. But the thought of like, is this it? No more life than that? You know, I wanted to be back in the country where you can walk outside and you feel, you just feel more natural. There's a certain amount of peace in the country that you don't get in the city, because no matter where you go in LA, the horns are honking, the airplanes and helicopters are flying over, the ambulances are going by. There's no place to get away from that, and it affects you.
There's no psychic
the
space.
Country where I am now, it's like beautiful, quiet animals, natural animals, you know.
Natural animals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That haven't been tweaked. You know, if you take animals, like say for dogs or monkeys or any kind of animal, and you put them in cages, they start acting abnormal. And the animals in the cages, you know, they get berserk. They do all kinds of weird behavioral things. And it's the same thing with people. If you're in the country for a while and then you see how people act in the city, you know, you just want to leave and get away from them.
It markedly, that's very apt what you're saying, because I've been, well, and you know, I grew up in the country, not far from out there in Swansboro where I met you. But you know, my wife didn't necessarily grow up in the country. She grew up in LA area, and it takes if you grow up out of that environment, it takes a bit of a transition to get to a place where you actually understand and enjoy that natural environment, and then you get that reflective look back when you go back. And I come here into Portland, drive into the city. I never used to call it a city until recently, actually. It was like always a little big town, and now it feels like a city. But it's a staggering difference from being back out in the country. So yeah, that's great. But now you said, so you retired for a short time, and then what brought you back into, what made you pick up the hammer again?
Well, you've heard people say this over and over, and this is true. I was busier being retired than I was when I was working. But I wasn't making any money, and my body was starting to fall apart because I didn't go to some exercise place to stay in shape. You know, I was so used to always being in shape, I just took it for granted. Well, all of a sudden, I couldn't hardly hop up on a curb. You know, my body was like, just, I don't know what I was doing, but it wasn't doing something good.
Yeah.
So anyway, a friend of mine who I did a room addition for and remodeling and all this, they asked me to come work on a second house that they had. And I was turning down work left and right for over a year. A lot of people were calling me, and I just said, no, I'm retiring, you know. And so anyway, I decided I needed to go do a job or something. And it took me a while to build my body back up to where I could work 8 hours without complaining a lot. And of course, after about, probably about a month, I was back in shape. That's the good thing about construction. You stay in good shape. So when you can do a lot of other stuff because of it. But one of the most important things when, say if you're an apprentice and you go to work for some guy and he says, lift with your back, listen to the guy. Because he probably has a bad back and that's why he's telling you to lift with your, without bending over, and lift with your legs. I'm sorry, I said that wrong. Lift with your legs, don't lift with your back. And the guy is telling you that probably got hurt somewhere along the line. Now he's trying to keep you from getting hurt. And you get tired of listening to these old guys, don't do this, don't do that. But hey, look at their hand. How many fingers do they have? Are they missing a finger? You know, a lot of guys are. They weren't listening to all the safety things. That if you listen to the old guys, they'll tell you all the safety factors. Because you want to stay in good shape, you want to keep your back in good shape, and you want to keep all your digits. So safety is number one about construction. And if you ever have somebody tell you to do something and you feel like it's too dangerous and you don't want to do it, don't do it.
Don't
Period.
do it.
Just tell them, I can't do that. I feel like it's too dangerous and I'm afraid I'm going to get hurt if I do it. And just be honest with them. If you have to, walk away from the job and go work for someone who has more common sense, because the guy telling you that probably doesn't have enough sense. And a lot of guys get other people hurt. So you keep your head, use your common sense. So there you go.
Yeah, no, that's great. So for me, I've done a lot of form work, carpentry, done a lot of framing at this point, and I either bend with my knees or I bend at the waist on a lot of times where I'm doing things where you're bent over, right? Like you're doing form work. A lot of times you're on your feet, but you are bent over. But that's not to be confused with lifting is a different situation there. And I think people get that confused sometimes, but you're absolutely right. Lift, if you're just lifting, it's with your legs, not your back. And, but that doesn't mean you're not going to use your back. And it doesn't mean you're not going to use your body to work. And I think that's kind of an interesting point there. The safety culture has gotten to a point where we're kind of, you mentioned the word soft, and I realize that, you know, there's a fine line there between being safe and being productive, right? And I grew up with the guys who were the most productive were also the most safe, and those two things, they're not mutually exclusive. They're actually have to combine those two elements in order to have a very effective project and a very effective positive outcome for that job here.
Yeah, I've also had people work for me, and if you watched them, they walked around, you would think they were walking around slowly, and you would think they weren't getting anything done because you have other people that are running around, you know, like chickens with their head cut off. But I had a couple of guys working for me, and they did more work than anyone else, but they were methodical. They walked slowly. They knew what they were doing. They were being safe. They weren't going to hurt someone else. And people who are running around, sometimes they hurt other people. I had a guy hurt me, my back really bad. And you're talking about working bent over. Well, I got so I couldn't get back up. That's how bad my back got hurt. at one point. And what it was I was working on a housing track. Okay, this is when I first moved to Sacramento, because I told you I left. I left LA, I went up to Oxnard, and then I went on up to Sacramento. And I was a union carpenter at that point. And I was stacking houses, trusses, you know, and also framing, you know, cut up houses, you know, roofs. But so I needed help, and the boss said, well, hire somebody that's coming by looking for a job, and I'll put them on payroll. So I had this young guy come up, and he was looking for a job, and I hired him. And the boss got madder than hell because he was a black guy, you know. And so I'm working with this guy, and we're getting along really good, and we're putting out some work, you know. He was a brand new guy, first grade apprentice, but I taught him what he needed to do for us to be productive. And they were constantly harassing me about bringing a black guy on. And back then, you know, you never complained about, you know, you didn't go sue your boss because they were racist. You know, you kind of put up with it as long as you could. And finally, the guy comes to me and he says, hey, Randy, I want you to run. We got another track we're starting off, and we want you to run it, because they could tell I knew what I was doing. They said, but you got to get rid of this guy, man, you know. And I got to admit, you know, they did have another black guy on the job, but when everybody got around for lunch, you know, that black guy was talking about colored guys, and, you know, and the guy I hired, he wasn't going there, man. He would be in everybody's shit right away if they said anything like that, you know. And
Good.
so they just couldn't handle it. So anyway, I said, well, why don't you just go get both of our checks, okay? And so I quit, and, you know, he lost his job anyway because they were so racist. And so I told him, look, man, I got a family, and I got to go find a job, but if I can, I'll get you back working with me again, you know. And I saw him all the time, because by then we were pretty close friends. But anyway, I got a job on the way home, and they put me with some young, strong guy, great big ass, muscle bound guy. And we were setting a beam on 2 posts. Now, we're standing up on top of 2 walls. You know how you walk the walls, the plates, and there's 2 posts coming up, and the beam was exactly the same width as the opening. So this guy, this beam's really heavy. I was in good shape and all, but when we picked up this I think it was a 4x12, probably about 20 some feet long, and we picked it up. Well, when he picks it up, you know how when you pick up weights, you bring them up and you lean back? Well, he picked the beam up and leaned back, and that put me standing on a wall with my arms held out, holding that beam up. Now, that was more than I could do, but I knew if I dropped the beam, it would go, my end would go down on the floor, and it'd probably kill him. So I'm sitting there, I have sweat coming out of my body like you wouldn't believe, and I'm holding that beam out there, and I'm trying to tell him, put it down, put it down. He's saying, pick it up, pick it up. Well, my arms are out about like this, holding a beam. Can you see that? So finally, I got him to put it down. Well, the next day, when I bent over, I couldn't get up very fast. And that turned into where I couldn't get up at all for like 15 minutes after bending over and working for a little while. And so that's why I'm saying, you got to watch who you're working with. It's nice when you have the same person you're working with, because you get to know each other. Which way do you pick up a piece of plywood and flip it over? Which hand's on the bottom? You know, you get to working with your guys. And
yeah.
So just try not to get hurt.
Yeah, no, it's very important. I mean, trying to hold a beam line. You know, it's funny. It reminds me of doing rifle manual in the Marine Corps. We'd have to hold hold your service rifle out in front of you for 3 or 4 minutes and you are dying, and that thing only weighs about 8 pounds, not even. So, I could only imagine holding a 4x12 out there. You probably pulled all of your ribs out of place, if not something else. That would mess you up pretty good. That's terrible.
It was really bad news.
And the story about who was the guy who was helping you? You said you had a friend of yours who was black who had come to work with you as an apprentice. What was his name?
Lawrence.
Yeah.
I met him on the job. He was a great guy. He went on and I think he we saw each other quite a bit after that. And he was framing houses on his own, had his own people.
Good.
So he learned enough for me to get out there and get some work done for other people.
Well, like what you were saying about having some camaraderie and having a rapport with the people working next to you it's a must for actually being productive. And it's sad that it's sad. The story is sad about how it ended, because it sounded like you guys were going to get into some good work, but you unfortunately had some bigots. Sounds like running work. That's unfortunate. You've told me that story before, and I was I don't know. That's always a proud moment to know that your ethical mind was always available. You had some morals and some character, right? Because let's face it, we talked about safety culture. We talk about people who are out there in the trades these days that aren't able to work with their hands, getting raises and getting new promotions when they're not ready for it. And part of that society is not just about being able to work with your hands, but it's also about having some ethical awareness, having some moral character, having some integrity. Those soft skills is massive. And sometimes that means standing up for the guy that's next to you if it comes down to it. I did a short video on business ethics versus personal ethics, and I just kind of scraped the surface on it, but that's really touching on that same piece. And, like you said, you got a job on your way home, right?
I got lucky and got to work right away.
Right. You're calling it luck, and you're calling it luck. And maybe that is exactly it, but luck does exist out there in the world. And if you're going to have some, if you're going to do all you have agreed to do and not encroach on other persons or their property, you're going to show up and end up and gravitate to people and situations that are going to work out for you in the long run. I'm a true believer in that, and I think that story kind of touches right on the ethical standards of what an apprentice needs, right? I mean, our people out there in the workforce need to have some ethos, I would say. So I appreciate that story. And it's funny too. You mentioned the guy who was yelling at you to pick up the beam was a big brawny guy. But it doesn't take that much to place yourself under a beam. You do need to be strong, no doubt, but it's a different kind of muscle out there on the job site. It's not just looking pretty. It's about, it's that bottom of the gas tank sort of strength is what you need out there. And anyway, I appreciate your stories on that. That was cool.
You have to be aware. You have to be aware of the people around you. Like he should have been aware that if he brought that beam back, it would stretch me out. Or like somebody working below you, you had to hang on to your hammer tighter. Because guess what? If you drop your hammer from the second floor or third floor on somebody's head, or even their arm or foot or shoulder, you're going to hurt them.
Yep.
And it's awareness. It's a little bit of awareness around you. So you can't just like work it as fast as you can and throw things around. You have to be aware.
Yeah. I talked to another term and another saying I learned in the Marine Corps was for when you're working on, when you're out on the range, you use slow is fast and fast is smooth. And I have found that is those are words to live by on the job site as well. Like you said, like your guys who were working for you, they were working smooth. Mm-hmm. They weren't doing anything twice, right? Mm-hmm. When they got something done, they finished it completely and they moved on to the next part. They weren't scrambling because they're leaving a trail of mistakes behind them. And that's what I would call working smooth. It doesn't look fast and kinetic to the neophyte, right? The apprentice says, well, these guys are just standing around, but somehow miraculously the walls have stood themselves up and the roof is on and no one got hurt. That to me is a personification of smooth. And anyways.
And doing things correctly. I had to tear off a whole floor one time on those buildings that I built that were 3.5 stories high. We were using TGI trusses, and I nailed off the floors with these guys, and you had to put your nail spacing just properly. Well, you can put not enough nails, or you can put too many. Well, so I had to leave, and I told the guys, okay, they did 2 floors with me. Okay, I said, okay, you guys can nail off that floor, set all the plywood, and I'll be back. I come back and they put too many nails in. I had to rip the plywood off and a lot of the TGIs and throw them away. So would another contractor have done that? Not too many of them, but an ethical one would. I had to take the hit because my guys, some guys listen, some guys don't. And even though they did this several times before, they just didn't they thought more was better, and more is not always better.
No, and I'm amazed at how many people have been framing or working as a carpenter for quite a few years. They miss that one. They seem to understand that not enough nails is a bad thing, but a lot of times it takes them a long time, a strangely long time, to realize that if you put too many nails with your nail gun like Rambo in the side of that board, you're now compromising the integrity of the structure. And it seems like it takes a real long time to figure that out. I'm not sure what that is.
And I'll tell you, some of the engineers are just full of crap too, because, they, in LA, especially, you have to use common nails, and the common nails are fatter.
Yeah. And
they split the boards a lot quicker. And I've seen where I could rip a joist out that was nailed up with commons to split the boards, where if you nailed it, even if you, instead of using 16s, you could nail it up with 8s and not be able to rip that joist off.
Say that.
I don't recommend
go back and say that again. My lights went out, so I'm going to edit that, but say that part again that you just did. Talk about in LA, the engineers had you using common nails. Start there again.
Okay, in Los Angeles, because of earthquakes, and it might be California statewide, everything was spec'd out to use common nails instead of
like
sinkers,
gun nails or like a
vinyl coated,
10D. Yeah,
right. So and it's a bigger, fatter nail. And supposedly, because it's a bigger, fatter nail, it should hold better. But when you put it in the wood, at the end of the wood, like you're nailing a joist on a wall, well, it splits the joist. And so the really, in my opinion, which, hey, I'm nobody to these engineers, but that's the wrong nail. And the sinkers, which is a skinnier 16, you have a lot less splitting. And they hold a lot better. And that's all there is to it. And especially if you put in extra, 1 or 2 extra nails, well, you're really going to split the wood up.
Yeah.
So,
No, I totally agree. So they've got to up the sizing or the engineering of the material that you're nailing into, or they got to do something about those nails.
exactly.
So,
You got that right.
or it's also could be a product of our time, isn't it? I know a lot of architects, a lot of engineers, a lot of them I've had really great experiences with, but I've also met a number of people who do go and they get that degree and they work for a firm and they are told to sit down and use a certain software, and I'll be damned if it's not a few years later that all they know how to do is to push buttons and produce software images and calculations. I don't know that I'm that excited about that. John Nordling, I've used him here on many projects in the Portland area. John, if you hear this, sorry, but I think he's into his 70s now. He's actually will sit down and break everything out, draw it out, draft it, calc it out, and he's doing the engineering himself as an engineer would. He's not depending on just some proprietary system to kick him out numbers. And I think what you're getting at is part of that industry has allowed us to be so convenienced that it's gotten into the industry professionals who are not necessarily applying themselves on the same levels. But anyway, these are all things kind of outside the box of the average apprentice or above their pay grade. But it sure is funny when these kinds of conversations roll downhill and they hit that apprentice right on the back of the head and they don't realize it, right? Mm-hmm. But that's very cool. So what's something else? Like you mentioned, attitude is a must, right? And I know it sounds campy, but there's that, throughout the 80s and 90s or late 80s and 90s, attitude is everything. You saw that was kind of a word campaign, and then Nike was just do it and all this sort of thing. And I regardless of what you think about Nike, the just do it thing is, I think there's some merit to that. But what would you say to the apprentice about just getting out there and getting over yourself and get to work? Something in that nature. You mentioned attitude. What else what's some other nitty gritty details that would be good for an apprentice to hear?
Well, one of the biggest problems I had was whoever wasn't, say you got 10 guys working together and you're with a couple guys, there's always somebody they're talking about. And, they'll pick on one guy for a while, and the next thing, these other people are picking on them. Or usually if you're complaining about someone who's not doing a good job, next thing you know, you made a mistake. So, and I saw that happen because, 2 or 3 guys would be talking about the mistakes this one guy made. He's always doing this, he's always doing that. And then they'll turn around. It might not be the same mistake, but they'll make a mistake. They're just setting themselves up with negative energy. And at one point, I used to appoint a foreman. And that way I could leave the job more, and have somebody in charge. And it got so bad that when I left the job, they'd drop their nail bags, right? And then they'd walk around telling everybody what to do, and everybody'd be pissed at them because they're walking around trying to be somebody. And I went to about maybe 5 or 6 of these guys. And I would just, okay, man, forget it. You're not the type of foreman I'm looking for because you're causing problems. So I just went to all my guys and I said, look, all you guys know what you're doing. All the journeymen. I said, there's no foreman from now on. And if you guys don't work together, I'm going to just fire the guys who can't get along with the other guys because this is too much. You always got to bicker about somebody or something. So either you guys work together and get the job done, or whoever's not working with the other guys is going to lose their job. And that worked. And all of a sudden, everybody was happy because everybody was equal. And they started working together a lot better. I got to tell you, it really worked out. And I'd come back in the job, and if there was some new guy or something, and if he was trying to pull some shit, these guys would be right on his ass. And they'd tell me, this guy's doing that. And, you know, and they'd let me know, and we'd give him a chance, straighten up, and, you know, work in our system where everybody's honorable and a leader, and it worked out.
Well, yeah, I mean, it sounds like freedom to me. Yeah. Right? I mean, let's face it, none of us like to be told what to do all the time. Even if we're good at following orders, it gets old, right? And so it's when it starts to stunt your creativity on a job site, or your problem solving gets inhibited because it turns into a massive argument all the time. It's just not productive. And you don't leave the job site feeling like you've accomplished anything. You feel like you just left the job site being told what to do all day, right? So right. I always appreciated that, working with your guys.
And the natural foreman comes forward, even though he doesn't have the title, but all of a sudden people go to the natural leader.
Yeah.
And sometimes it would be one person for this project, and it'd be another person for another project, depending on their talents. Yeah. But you see where they would be helping people, you know, do it right, and the people would come to them because they knew how to do it. And yep. So it's a natural selection.
Cool stuff. So what are you working on these days?
Right now I'm doing a bathroom, master bedroom remodel on my farmhouse, or my ranch. It's more of a ranch. It's set up for horses. Yeah. It's a cool spot. I got to come and see it. So you're doing that, but you said you came out of retirement. So are you doing some other stuff there in Nevada now? And by the way, what town are you in? Well, you don't have to tell me if you don't want to. Well, I don't care. I'm in Gardnerville. Okay. And which is below Reno. And I'm thinking about getting my Nevada license. I don't have a Nevada license, so I'm just working as a homeowner. Got it. Right now. But yeah, I'm thinking about coming out of retirement only because I see the opportunities are crazy good right now in construction. There's just not enough people, and the people around here make way too much money for their talents, you know? You can say that again. The crew I had in LA, we were very talented and we made good money, but you know, they're charging way too much for their talent skills at a lot of the different contractors here. Well, I shouldn't even say all that. So you might want to edit that out. But, that's between me and you. But these guys, man, they charge a fortune, and they're just not that sharp. Well, you're telling it like it is, but we're also having an economics conversation here again, because the dollar is only worth about 4 cents. Yeah. Now it's literally worth 4 pennies. And then now we've got, like we were saying earlier, that now everyone's talking in trillions, but people, again, they're missing the boat here. They don't realize that the value of the dollar has plummeted. And so you need more dollars to buy the things that you would normally pay for. A loaf of bread, a contractor, whatever. So it is hard for me to sit back and see what people who are very new into the trades are able to make right now. But at the same time, the value of the dollar doesn't get the same amount of traction. You know, watch your lattes and watch your gas at the pump, and you start to get a sense of what I'm talking about. Not, you know, for the viewers out here. True inflation is more like 10% when you consider what inflation used to be considered back in the 70s. Oh, yeah. You know how they looked at inflation? It would be like 10% right now. Oh, yeah. They and it's built into the corporate templates these days that, oh, you know, inflation's always 2 to 4%. Well, I think we blew that up a while ago. So,
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're absolutely right. So it's interesting to find where is that price point. But as you know, as a contractor, it comes down to it's still a meritorious culture, which is a big deal. And you should be paid for your skills and your abilities and your experience. And and that's become very hard for the average consumer to identify. They don't necessarily know what they're looking at. If they look at you or they look at me or they look at another guy, who here is the most skilled out of these guys we want to use to build our house, fix our roof, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so it is a bit of a crapshoot, and it's always been a bit of the Wild West in the contracting world, especially the residential market. And, so that's interesting. Like you're saying, there maybe some people are charging a little more than they should be, but it's to their credit, everyone's out there trying to make as much as they can.
Yeah.
Right. And that's a real deal.
The demand is way higher than the available people.
And so that price just keeps coming up. That's what.
So I'm just complaining because I didn't get a chance to charge twice what I was worth,
Yeah. Well, it's also scary too. I'm hoping that's gonna come back down a little bit, because we might be rolling into hyperinflation here if you don't already think we may already have hit that point. But
if you look at Rome, at the end days of Rome, they had 10 for coins. They started out with gold and silver. They ended up with 10, and the people were soft, So, hey, that's what happens to
we're not even 300 years old yet.
Yeah, I know.
Not even 300 years old yet.
We're on fast forward.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, as you know, we love talking about economics, but the apprentice needs to have a sense of this. So maybe you could continue on that role for a minute and talk apprenticeship, but also what are the economic factors? And I think we've touched on some, but what are the economic factors that really are that kind of silent driving force that is very often affecting, in a very, very physical manner, the apprentice? Can you riff on that a little bit?
First off, if you're a hard worker and if you're just halfway intelligent, you can make yourself irreplaceable if you're dependable, and if you just constantly trying to help the team, then you'll make more money. No one would want to get rid of a guy like that. But if you're constantly just trying to get, what you can, and you just want a paycheck and you want to get the hell out of there, and you're not paying attention to what's going on around you, the work. See, first of all, you want the contractor to be successful. So your job is to help him be successful. You want to make sure those walls are built strong and straight and as fast as possible. And you want to make sure that everything gets done timely. And also you want to make sure that everybody's happy. That your job is to create your own world, to create everything you can do to make the type of world that you want. Everybody wants to be happy. Everybody wants to have money. Create it by being the people that you would want to be around.
It's very funny. I'm interjecting here, but I asked you to talk about economics, which you're doing, but I'll be darned if it doesn't sound like you're talking about ecology.
Well,
they're kind of the same is what I'm getting at, right?
Yeah. If you economics and it all ties together.
Yeah.
A lot of people think that in school you're taught economics. It's all bullshit. This Keynesianism, or I'm pretty sure that's how they say it. It's all bullshit. And real economics is me and you making a deal where we're both happy. You know, we both win. Like, I'm willing to go work for you for, you know, $15 an hour, and you're willing to pay me that to do a certain deed, and you do give me the money, and I do the work, and we're both happy. That's economics, period. And all this other stuff is printing money out of thin air. It's gonna come back and bite some people in the butt, and it's us that's gonna bite.
Yeah.
But as long as we learn a trade, see, when this all, if the economy ever collapses, people who know trades are going to be able to survive this a lot better than people who don't know trades, because you're going to need to keep the lights on somehow, and nobody else. Everybody knows how to do it. Is going to be taking care of their own.
Yep.
So learn some trades, man, for survival, if no other reason.
If no other reason, that's well put. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Resourcefulness. Yeah. Wow. Well, Randy, I think we're just about run out of time.
Okay. Love you,
I'll
brother.
talk to you soon.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye, brother.